All right, we're live for the Friday edition of the Mike and Mario Show. Excited to be back, and what a heck of a week, and it's just getting started. Mario, how you doing, my friend?
Yeah, I'm doing well. And you, Mike? It was an eventful week for not just in the crypto world, but also for the dollar. We're seeing the dollar actually today drop quite sharply versus the euro.
Yeah.
Uh, Not that it didn't yesterday after that CPI. It dropped more against the pound, but today the euro is up like 1.2%. Treasuries are not trading today because of the Veterans Day,
Hmm.
but yeah, they got bought quite you know aggressively yesterday. The
Right.
10-year yield dropped by 33 basis points.
Hmm.
One of the viewers asked to talk about that. Well,
Yeah.
that's showing that the bond market sees the Fed maybe starting to have to take the foot off the brake.
Hmm.
Maybe yeah, because I think there's a lot of problems out there, not
Oh.
just inflation or price rises and like diesel, for example, but also mortgage, real estate mortgages, the
Hmm.
corporate debt market as well.
Yeah.
uh, it's all kind of getting to a point, even though we're told that everything's great.
Right.
I think
That's
it's
it. Yeah, nothing's changed whatsoever. Like we're still on course towards that day of reckoning, just because the debt is not, hasn't been solved. It hasn't been touched, and even though everything's signaling that the Fed has to make some adjustments, once again, the damage they've done with just raking to this point signals that there's going to be a day of reckoning whatsoever. So, thank you for joining us on this live stream. Feel free to throw out thoughts, ideas, suggestions in the chat, and we'll definitely jump on those. We have 7 or 8 different articles, topics, so we'll just start off with the current downward trajectory of the Dixie, just because a lot of people love to use this, especially when it was trending upward. They were saying the
yeah,
dollar's strong and
yeah.
it's the most immutable. That okay,
Uh, I told you, let's look at that. But I've always said as well, this morning in my video, I looked at a 40-year chart, and the dollar index really hasn't gone anywhere in
mm-hmm.
40 years. It goes up and down,
Yeah,
but it's measuring against other fiat currencies, so they're
right,
not really good stores of value. So, but be as it may, in the current system, that's showing us that this might be a top for the dollar.
mm-hmm.
Even though I thought the top was 2017, and
Mm-hmm.
I have been wrong
Yeah,
about that. I thought we'd have a bottom. That 2017 was the top, and we'd have a bottom sometime in 2024. And why did I think that? Well, because I studied the cycles. They're usually 7 to 9 years, and the big last bottom was in 2008. So I thought, 9 years, 2017, we had a top at 103.50.
mm-hmm.
So I didn't see it going higher, but it did. But I still don't think it changes anything
Right,
in terms of the fiat currencies. They're going to keep sinking versus gold and silver because they're real money.
mm-hmm.
Uh, and also hard assets, I would say, but maybe not as much as gold and silver.
Right. Now, could this reversal or semi downward trajectory of the Dixie just be a temporary, say, pause or
It could be.
reversal due to the CPI figures that to me I question?
Oh, yeah,
And so, because once again, the that dollar milkshake
yeah,
theory that the dollar
yeah.
will ultimately be the ultimate hedge honcho is still in play because the rest of
Yeah.
the world has
Well,
not broken yet.
yeah, I don't drink the dollar milkshake because the dollar is just as bad as the other currencies.
Correct.
It only has a reputation, and of course, it's almost like Coca-Cola.
Mhm.
It's got a good brand name, but it doesn't mean to say it's good for you, Coca-Cola or the dollar, because the dollar is I owe you nothing.
Right.
It was something. It was a good product up until 1971
Hmm.
because it was you could get 35 for $35. You could always get an ounce of gold.
Hmm.
That's what made the dollar reputable. And it's still that brand and that reputation is getting very, very waver
Right.
way thin now. I don't think it's going to survive.
Especially there's going to be that much more pressure on the reserve status of the dollar, especially with the BRICS. And of course, I'm sure you saw that announcement of 12 additional countries. So they're making sure they're promoting that still. And at the, whenever that is officially rolled out or announced, and the payment methods for those countries to operate, I would imagine, of course, USD won't be a part of their preferred methods of payment. So that's going to also put more pressure downward on this Dixie
Yeah.
chart here.
Your question though was, is the dollar index dropping just because of the CPI? Partly, but also if you look at the chart, it started turning down. I think towards just after the middle of October, it started like it topped. So yeah, so like in the last couple of days, it's dropped a lot, but it's been topping.
So September 28th was the actual peak, 114.
There you go. So it has been even longer. But yeah, yesterday the CPI accelerated it, and even the day before, I think it was a bit lower. And we also saw gold and silver trade really well last Friday, if you remember. And
I think it was last couple of weeks or so. It's once it hit above that $20 for silver in particular, that's when things have been trending upward. Now, if it peaked here in September, that was around the same time frame that we were getting that the narrative out of the mainstream media that inflation's peaked, is trending downward, and then the figures start coming in. I think it was 8.2, 8.1, whatever. So I wonder how that all factors in. But
and I definitely now as well, because I think the previous CPI was 8.2.
Right.
It was expected. Some people expected 7.9, 8.0, and it came at 7.7. So there, I saw the FT. They had an article, has inflation peaked, and I don't believe it has, because CPI is not inflation, as we know. CPI is the consequence of inflation, and that's why I think ultimately, and I don't know when, but we're going to see hyperinflation, and we're going to see bond yields go through the roof. We're going to see CPI go through the roof, and even if the Fed raises rates, people won't care, because they say this is it. The dollar is, but right now it looks like it's getting a bit of a reprieve. And yeah, it's really confusing, everything that's going on. Maybe you want to cover a little bit of crypto?
Yeah, one sec. Let me share with you one thing where I made sure I mentioned on my last little rant here. When you look at even the figures they give us, it's the numbers themselves are not what they are in reality, just because it excludes energy and food. And so even though it's, what is that? What was that? What was that mug?
I did that like even before the silver stack. It's an old mug. It says snore on and keep stacking.
Let me just share something, Richard, real quick, and then we'll pivot on to that FTX, because that definitely is an attention getter. And it so happens to be at the same time that we got that extremely low CPI figure. But here's just more, chart wise, 12-month percentage change consumer price index for October. And so here's that 7.7 that we were given, but then that excludes food, which is 10.9, and energy, which is 17.6. And of course, those are still low figures.
Sorry, I think it does include food and energy. The core number doesn't include food and energy, but the CPI does include food and energy.
Okay, so yeah, that's what
core is X food and energy.
Yeah,
but I think the like owner's equivalent rent, that's what they use for the real estate. And it's only a survey conducted by the Fed. They call people who own a home and say, how much would you rent your house for? Which is really not a good indication. And yeah.
So yeah, the numbers don't tell the entire story at times, especially when it's coming from the source that is controlling the narrative. All right, so let's move on to the FTX. So I see a lot of people in the chat talking about FTX. So we have, and so as of now, Sam Bankman-Fried has been exposed as a fraud, as a operative, or what? What is your thoughts on this, man? Like, I
Yeah,
just
I mean, it's Rafi Farber said that. I don't know if I'll get in trouble for this, but because Rafi is Jewish, right?
uh-huh.
He said that we put that picture back on.
Okay, one second.
He said that this guy has a Jew fro,
Uh,
like an afro.
uh-huh.
But I thought that was funny. No, anyway, seriously speaking, actually, when I heard about this FTX collapsing,
Mhm,
maybe about 48 hours ago. I'd never heard of the guy,
mhm,
but I looked into it because it's a huge story. And I was surprised how he rose so quickly out of
mhm,
nowhere and how well connected he was. He was meeting, he had Bill Clinton and Tony Blair at his conference in
mhm,
April in the Bahamas. His aunt, his mother's sister, she works for the World Economic Forum. You can look
mhm,
her up. I think her name is Linda Fried.
mhm,
He donated $40 million to the Democratic Party. He's the
mhm,
second biggest donor after George Soros. And all the businesses in the Bahamas and the Caribbean, if it's a clean business, why don't you set up in the US?
mhm.
And
And so,
yeah,
but one of the things about that I noticed is that the bankruptcy, Chapter 11, was filed in
oh
Delaware.
yeah,
So one of their subsidiaries or something is here, but
yeah,
it's a contagion of just
yeah,
complete confusion, and
yeah,
it's going to the ripple effects definitely to me, and that's why I was very suspicious that as this hit, and it appears that CZ Binance CEO is the one who kind of got it started,
yeah,
hinted at going to come in and buy things up, but then again, basically expose how deep the web goes to where
yeah,
there's no unraveling a Ponzi in the midst of it. And
yeah.
here we are now. Then the 7.7 CPI came out to turn things around. I'm like,
Oh yeah, that you could, yeah,
that's
that's
very interesting.
part of that. But the other thing I would say, I'm not trying to bash crypto here.
Hmm.
Um, I think the concept of the blockchain is a good one, and I learned about it in 2012. And I remember when Bitcoin was $80, and I had a few, and I
Hmm.
traded it. I did put like $1,000 into a private fund in 2016,
Hmm.
Bank to the Future. I still have it.
Hmm.
I've gotten the $1,000 back, but I've always told people, if you like crypto or you like Bitcoin, you've done your homework, don't be greedy. Don't sell your house and mortgage it and put everything into it. Put how much you can lose.
Hmm.
Uh, put an amount that you won't make you not sleep at night, and an
Right.
amount that if you lost everything, you'd still be okay. But an amount as well that could do really well, and it's the lesson of it. And unfortunately, with crypto, I think greed has gotten the better of the whole space.
Right.
And
Right.
I was telling you about this book, The Age of Gold,
Hmm.
by H.W. Brands. I read this book many years ago, and it's a really good book about the California gold rush.
Hmm.
We know that gold is a good asset and it's been around for thousands of years. But when they found gold in California in 1849, the whole world, not just Americans, rushed there to
Hmm.
try to make their fortune. And the people who really made the money were not the prospectors, even though some did,
Hmm.
but it was the people providing the material, the restaurants, the saloons,
The
the
business is built around it. Yeah.
yeah, they made the money. Well, actually, there wasn't speculation as there is in crypto trading the stuff with
Hmm.
derivatives. So you could say this is the Wild West, uh,
Hmm.
in
Yeah.
crypto. And
Yeah.
a lot of people, unfortunately, are getting hurt because FTX. I didn't realize that because I've done a lot of research in the last 48 hours. They lured like Tom Brady and uh,
A lot of celebrities.
Curry and
Who's who.
all these people.
Mhm.
And can you imagine the millions of people that put money into that and now are
So
gonna?
yeah. So the moment crypto shifted from being, debanking to wanting institutional funds and waiting on clarity of regulatory frameworks and stuff like that, that's when Wall Street crept in and became a casino and a slush fund operation for the creators of stable coins and all these private tokens that were basically proven to be Ponzi's. But
Yeah.
here's just a little bit of information. It says only 10% of FTX's 8.8 billion in customer funds is backed by liquid assets.
Yeah.
And so literally fractional reserve,
Yeah.
crypto banking or whatever it's called, similar to the current model we're in now. Like, do you
Yeah.
really think once you give your funds to these people, they're operating your best interest? And people are finding out that no.
A link. It's an old article. If you could bring it up, please. And
Okay.
it's
Let me
this is
grab
when
it.
I got a bad feeling about crypto, and I know it has gone up a lot since then. I used to have an account with this exchange. It's called Poloniex.
Yeah.
It's Goldman-backed startup Circle buys Poloniex. I had an account with them because I've been posting my videos since 2016 on Steemit, Hive, and I've been earning Steam
Yeah.
tokens, and Poloniex was a good exchange to change the Steam to Bitcoin and then cash the Bitcoin for
Right.
payments. But all of a sudden, they changed. And I thought, what's going
Right.
on with Poloniex? And I saw, wow, Goldman bought them, and they made it really hard to deal in the exchange. And I thought Goldman Sachs getting involved. And I saw that SBF, this young CEO guy,
Yeah.
well, ex-CEO,
Yeah.
he met with the CEO of Goldman Sachs in late March. And so, and he joked, maybe eventually we could take over Goldman Sachs, but
Not the
but
case. It was the other way around. Now, when Poloniex, whenever they were purchased, that's at the same time they started talking about KYC, AML, stuff like that, and they started wanting identification. And then that's when I got off of there as well.
Yeah.
So,
Well, the other thought I had, Mike, and you might like this, my conspiratorial mind is that how do you convince the public now to have a centralized central bank digital currency? Well, you make people lose faith in the crypto space, and I know that the exchange is not decentralized, FTX,
yeah,
but there are exchanges that are decentralized, but they're not regulated. So, but I think a lot of people don't know the difference. So, a lot of people that got involved with FTX, they're going to say, "Wow, maybe the best thing is a Fed coin because it's regulated. It's
yeah.
it
And I think the majority of funds that would probably fall for that happens to be in the pension funds, especially. Like, let me share with you here. We got, as a result of this, Canadian teachers have put 95 billion or million rather dollars in a hole in their pensions in the FTX. So as things unravel and more is exposed, then stuff like this, it will probably make it easier to sell it to the retirement funds, the hedge funds, and all that stuff like that. That
even to the general public, even to young people, because I'm sure a lot of young people have gotten fleeced with FTX.
yeah.
I saw that SoftBank from Japan is a big investment bank. They lost $100 million.
Yeah.
BlackRock
Yeah.
into it. I think there's a digital hedge fund called Genesis. Apparently, they have 175 million with the exchange, and they don't know if they're going to get that. You've had Brevin Howard, which is one of the biggest hedge funds in London.
Yeah.
He put Alan Howard, the guy who runs it, he put some of the money in there. That's all gone. I mean, a lot of people got fooled by this young guy. He seemed to throw a lot of money at things, and it's weird, and people bought into it. My wife thought that it reminded her of Nick Leeson, who was like a back office guy at Barings Bank, and all of a sudden he started making millions, and his bosses loved him, and eventually it collapsed the bank because he was basically committing fraud. I don't know if this guy committed fraud yet. We have to see.
Here's more just insight as to how bad things go. Here we got a list of 134 FTX firms that filed for bankruptcy, and as I was looking at some of these names here, like literally these shield companies or shield businesses scattered throughout the planet. I would imagine they was funneling some things and doing. I mean, it's a
Oh
lot
yeah,
of like we got
you
B
know,
for transfer Egypt is one of the name of the companies.
you know, Alameda is their hedge fund. I
Yeah,
I know Alameda is like isn't it a place near Oakland, California?
I have no idea.
It's already not the best of places, but it's given Alameda an even worse name, which
But
is
but
ironic.
think about how many Alamedas, like so right here, Alameda Global Service of Research, Bahamas Holdings, KKCL. So it's let me see, it's 11 things labeled Alameda. So like,
Mm.
what does all that contain? Well, we're gonna find out, and it's definitely it will not be, and that's where how much of this will be spilled over into the legacy system, Wall Street, like all the
Uh,
accounts set up in the Bahamas that was funneling funds from Wall Street, JP Morgan, so right, and that's why I'm like, there's no coincidence that we got a little bit of a
you want to
rally.
show that meme about the CPI, the 7.7?
Oh,
Uh,
with let me.
yeah,
Oh,
because markets love the CPI at
this
7.
one.
Yeah,
I saw this last
I
night. Like,
think this explains what the market did yesterday. You know,
right.
in
Oh
February it
my
was a
goodness.
really bad number. Now it's great.
Right. If the numbers improving, yeah, just because it's not as high as it was. But yeah, so all right, we got more stories here, man. Let's keep it moving. What else we got here? I got where else you want to take this?
Uh,
You sent me the
over-
screenshot of go ahead
yeah, sorry.
of the sentiment overall. So I pulled that up.
Oh yeah, this came out today. These numbers at 10 Eastern time. These are the preliminary numbers, and Michigan consumer expectations or sentiment. And the
Hmm.
markets look at this number closely for some reason.
Yeah.
Because I remember, when I worked in the markets, we always used to say to our clients in Europe, "Oh, Michigan is coming out today."
Hmm.
But you see, the previous number was 59.9, and it came out at, or this one is consumer expectations. Yeah, it's dropped
Yeah.
quite a bit. So if you go back to the previous screen, maybe
Yeah. Got you.
you see the 59.9, the one people look at is consumer
Yeah.
sentiment. It's dropped to like 54.7, and it was expected 59.5, and that's a
Mm,
pretty big miss. And any
yeah.
number below 50 means we're in a recession, so it's still above it. And the
Hmm.
inflation expectation, though, uh, you see that went up. Uh,
Mm,
hard
yeah.
to find. So those weren't very good numbers. But right today, the bond market, the treasuries aren't trading, so we don't really know. I
Hmm.
suspect treasury yields would be further down today a little bit, only because the dollar is weaker.
Yeah.
We'll have to wait till Monday.
Interesting. Interesting. So us touch a little bit on what's happening in your neck of the woods, the UK. Assuming Sunak is doing a better job than Truss.
Yeah, Russian Fanuc, that's what Biden called Rishi Sunak. Rishi Sunak, yeah, he's
Oh
uh,
my goodness. But UK economy shrinks
yeah,
as economists warn of more pain to come. What kind of pain
yeah.
are you talking about?
Not well, more pain than that. They got rid of Truss and Kwarteng. They were going to cut taxes
Hmm.
and try to get the economy going again. The
Yeah.
the new team on the Sunak and Hunt, they're going to raise taxes, and they're going to also cut spending.
Hmm.
Cutting spending, I don't mind, and even raising taxes. So, but yeah, so even the Bank of England, I think last week said we're going to have 2 or 3 quarters of a negative growth or
Hmm.
recession. So it's not getting better, and I don't think it prices are going to come down. The CPI, what
Yeah.
people call inflation. We had German CPI today, was 10.4, so it's still pretty high. And I
Yeah.
think one of the reasons they got the CPI down in the U.S. is that the U.S. sold a lot of their oil reserves, and that
Yeah.
brought
That's gonna be a
down
problem.
oil price, and they put that into the CPI.
Yeah.
It is on the so that's why even an economist from the White House yesterday said, "Wow, the fact that we sold the strategic petroleum reserves, that helped bring down inflation."
Yeah.
Which really doesn't make sense because inflation, as we know, is monetary phenomenon, but they'll use anything to try to convince people that everything's fine and that there's
Right.
no inflation.
Like I think deliberately draining the strategic petroleum reserves was literally a setup for next year, just because they're talking about trying to buy it back when it gets a certain number. I don't think it's going back to that number no time
Well,
soon. Especially,
they have to buy it back though because it's part of the AIEA, I think, International e- Energy Agency. A lot of countries have to have a certain amount. So I
yeah,
actually think they're going to start buying it back soon because
hmm
we had the election. Now
yeah.
is the time to do it.
Oh, but the election is still going on though. Like it's not. I mean, it's still they've drawn this thing out. Like so. Once again, it's undetermined as to the
Don't you
outcome yet.
guys have calculators in the States?
Not when the ballots just happen to come out of nowhere. So you can have all the calculations you
Because
want.
even in Brazil, that is a third world country, they knew the next day who'd won.
Yeah, and I think they're still in the streets trying to protest that one, if I'm not
Well,
mistaken.
they're
So
protesting, but they have a result in Brazil.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
no, what I mean is that, post election now,
hmm
they don't have to worry about the election. So, and then you have another election in 2024. So they're going to make sure they get those reserves up again, and
hmm
the price goes up again a lot. They'll sell into it again.
right. Hey, I hope you're right. I just one
So
thing based upon
what's on the line still in terms of the
so
election?
so I haven't followed as much other than knowing that Arizona is another region that is pretty hot right now. It's always been a key state, and they've suspended the count until next week because of the 290,000 ballots that were dropped off on election day. So I guess they can't count it that much and that fast. So it's to be determined.
But
So for the
Congress
seats
now,
in Arizona.
Congress has gone Republican now, hasn't it? The
Uh,
House.
it's swaying that way. But then again, like I mentioned last night, even some of the alleged Republicans voted in favor of what Biden was trying to do last year. So it's like, what does that really mean at this point? Like, there's no guarantees that they are going to be for the people. So anyway, it's still a crap show.
Yeah.
Uh, I want to get your, I mean, so not get your thoughts, but I saw this article here. I want to just put it out there about UBI being floated around, assuming
Oh
this might
yeah.
get traction if there's more pain, but not surprising whatsoever. What are your thoughts when you saw this?
Yeah, and I think I saw this story and someone tweeted it out
hmm
and said problem a reaction solution.
hmm
And it's very true because Sunak was the minister of finance in 2020 when Boris Johnson locked the country down.
hmm
And I'm not like blaming just him because
Right,
every country did what he did.
right,
They did massive borrowing, QE, to keep people at home. Um, Furlough schemes. Where you keep your job and the government pays the companies to pay you.
PPP.
So he planted the seeds for the inflationary tsunami, and then the rising prices that we have, and,
Yeah.
and now he's gonna raise taxes, cut spending, and collapse the economy like it is already,
hmm
and that will be a great excuse to bring in UBI because a lot of people are going to be hard up,
Yeah.
but they're going to say, "Oh, if you want that benefit, it will come in as through a digital, universal basic income. Eventually, it could be a digital pound or Bank of
Yeah.
England digital currency."
Yeah.
And he's spoken about this, that he's very much for a digital currency. And
Yeah.
his father-in-law, who's one of the richest men in India, owns a company called Infosys, INFOSYS, and that
Mhm.
company is heavily involved in cybersecurity and digital IDs and stuff. So, um,
Yeah. I saw that. I'm trying to find. I saw that video. Here you go, right here, just where Sunik was talking about CBDCs and how that's it's important to work it in. And so yeah, so based upon just how things are playing out in the UK, is no way that it won't somehow, some way show up on
yeah,
this side after things blow through
oh,
with more pain.
yeah,
Yeah.
this will happen in the EU, like in the continent.
hmm
In the UK, we are in Europe to Americans, but to the people in the UK, Europe is the continent. So I
Yeah.
think it will happen there as well. They'll get UBI and CBDCs, and the Americans as well. And that's why I've told people for the last few years, if you don't want to be subject or,
Or
beholden,
enslaved.
yeah, make sure you are self-reliant and independent, and that you stack, you have savings on the side, maybe a bit in the system, paper savings. You know,
Mhm.
I'm not telling you to get everything out, but also have a little bit of a stack outside.
Yeah. And so best, especially from this crypto stuff, man, like, if you don't have access or direct ownership or possession of it, do you really own it? And so between,
Oh yeah,
accounts
that's
being
the
frozen and with withdrawals withheld, that to
mm,
me just resembles the banking sector too much.
yeah. I've always
And
told people about cryptos. Never leave your coins in an exchange.
mhm,
I've used a lot of exchanges only to exchange coins, but
yeah,
once it's exchanged, I send it back to my wallet.
right. Get out. So here's and we'll get ready to open up to for some questions and whatnot. Here's it looks like a possible story. You sent me this about what's happening in Saudi Arabia and how it's just very timely that there's a alleged uprising, and so
Yeah,
here's a perfect time color revolution in Saudi Arabia.
I'm not sure how credible this story is, but
Yeah.
well, and because I've never seen protests like this in Saudi Arabia, because
Hmm.
it's such a oppressive, authoritarian country
Yeah.
that you hardly ever see this. But if this is true, it makes sense, because we're going to have Xi Jinping traveling to China and just no traveling to
Right.
Saudi in December to
Yeah.
meet with um, so- uh,
Prince.
MBS, yeah,
Yeah.
mortgage-backed security. And they're probably going to seal a deal for like them joining the BRICS,
Mm,
or maybe dealing in oil in their own currencies.
yeah.
So what do the Americans? They. I spoke about this the other day. The Duran on YouTube. They talk a lot about geopolitics, and they were talking about this meeting, and
Hmm.
they said expect a lot of the Americans, the Anglo-American Empire, they're going to throw a lot of chaos into
Hmm.
these countries to try to stop them from
Right.
getting, cooperating
Right.
and not having to be dependent on the dollar. So this is possible. I don't think it's going to succeed.
Right. So we will see. But whenever there's a resistance or pushback against the dollar, dominance, then stuff happens. So it wouldn't be too surprising that that is accurate. All right. So let's get into some questions. Let's see what we got out here. Feel free to share your thoughts, ideas. Here's one from Pagan Warrior. It says, a question: when comics falls, who or what country do you think will set the spot? Mm, that's a great question.
Yeah, I
My
mean,
assumption would be those exchanges, like you got the Russian Moscow exchange, Shanghai Gold Cooperation, India. So by that time, those exchanges might try to set some type of, you know,
yeah, I think ultimately it will be just the free market,
mm,
people all around the world. But
mhm,
yes, the bigger exchanges like the Moscow, they want to have a Moscow standard, world
yeah,
standard. Shanghai, and even New Delhi, Dubai, they trade a lot of gold. Maybe even in London, even though the LBMA and the COMEX are tied at the hip. But I would say COMEX is more than just gold and silver. There are some other contracts traded there.
mhm,
Uh, COMEX is also owned by the CME, so I don't think the COMEX itself
mhm,
will collapse. It's the gold and silver contracts that
yeah,
might, and they might even still keep trading it, but they could trade the gold and silver futures as non-deliverables, just like a
mhm,
paper, because there are exchanges. But then they will lose. I would say a lot of importance if you have a golden futures contract that is not really backed by anything.
yeah. And speaking of which, so feel free to throw out some ideas, and I just noticed we got like a little action over here with gold and silver thus far.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
something worth.
Silver's been kind of kept under the thumb today, which is annoying, but
Yeah.
it's doing quite well. I mean, earlier this morning, before the U.S. came in, it
Hmm.
got up above 22, but it's been below. It's been in the red all throughout the U.S. session.
Yeah.
But gold is doing quite well.
Yeah, and so I had people like after I did a video in the middle of the week talking about the just the cryptocurrency meltdown. People were saying gold hasn't been any better, and I'm thinking like you only seeing it in USD terms, man. Like once you look at it just beyond your own probably
Well,
your own currency, you'll
yeah.
see that it's been responding differently in different regions and different currencies around the world. So you
Well, the
can't no
thing
longer
is,
just focus on USD.
you don't see gold dropping 20% a day. You know,
Right.
uh, it's very rare. Gold is and silver have been around for thousands of years, and the thing with crypto as well is the greed and the speculation. And it's not to say that if gold prices really take off eventually,
Mhm.
that we won't see the same kind of environment in the precious metals market, because you always attract people that are dishonest when there's money to be made.
Mhm. Right,
So
and metals has proven to be more of a long-term safety play, whereas in crypto has it's become a day trading, speculative,
yeah,
leveraging to the wazoo. Very grateful says brick metals market most likely since they have a majority. Bricks metals market is most likely since they
I
have a
think
majority.
it's in response to that
Yeah,
previous
but
question.
the Comex.
Yeah, I mean the BRICS have a lot of the metals. Um, yeah, and if COMEX and London lose control, she could be right.
Yeah, here's my view says will the U.S. economy crash in 2023? I've referring to the stock market. Anything's possible. Don't hold your breath, waiting and wishing for it, just because they've been able to prop things up somehow, some way, and yeah.
Well, I think uh, Jay Powell said in his last press conference that the economy in the first 3 quarters didn't really grow.
Mhm.
uh, and in the first 2 quarters, you had negative growth in the U.S. So I think, yeah, we're going to see a recession. We're seeing it in Europe already, a recession, and I
Mhm.
think it will also happen in the U.S. Whether it will be a sharp recession, I don't know, because these people, the central bankers and governments, they've been trying to, um, yeah, it's the Keynesian mentality. They've been trying to stop corrections, because recessions are, it's like, if you exercise, you have to take a break and
Mhm.
rest and then
Mhm.
exercise again.
Yeah.
But the Keynesians don't want you to take a break. It's always exercise, always running, running, running. And when they try to take a break, they throw more money and spending at things.
Right.
They, but eventually, I think you could have a scenario where the Keynesians try to throw everything at it and it doesn't work.
Right.
Everything
And
explodes.
it's been so much malinvestment due to this easy money policy that's been for last decade that the contagion effect of one company going belly up is so systemic that they can't afford it at this point. So
There's
they got
a
to keep hopium and going.
question from Pay Me My Money Backs for you.
Pay me money back says, do you think the talk of rebuilding the third temple in Israel will trigger something big here soon? Ah, that's a good question. I have followed that a little bit, but then again, I don't know the developments of it to where I personally, from a biblical standpoint, I don't anticipate that subject matter really impacting things at this current moment, just because depending on how you interpret Scripture, Revelations in particular, it's not until stuff really begins, picking up from a biblical perspective that the third temple is even really going to be important. So I don't think we're at that point yet. So
Nico Ark has an interesting question.
when it says when the true piece of silver is realized, do you think JP Morgan will be on the right side of the trade? That's a great question. So does JP Morgan still have that large physical possession?
Well, I mean, that's what we're told,
Mhm.
and I'm not because a lot of these banks, they hold stuff for clients, so you
Mhm.
never know. It could be for one, it could be for the Chinese or the
Yeah,
U.S. Treasury, but usually J.P. Morgan is on the right side of things.
yeah,
So I would say so.
yeah. And I think whatever that next event will be, will definitely impact the banks, and it's going to be shakeout of all those GSIBs, and I think they're going to be condensed, or they're going
Yeah.
to buy up each other or something to consolidate power. They're not going anywhere. I don't think they'll just be.
Question from UK Financial Preparedness for me.
Here we go. Question for Mario: did you see that Jarrow, if I'm not saying, in New England, in Northern England, Northeast England, I'm assuming, is going to offer UBI for its inhabitants?
I didn't. Oh, I think I did see something about that. Yeah, and it's funny because I think in the night, is it the ninth? Maybe you can tell me. UK Financial Preparedness. Wasn't there a march in the 1920s? Uh, the Jarrow March. They were like the people who were on strike. They marched all the way to London. So it's interesting that now they want to try the UBI on these people from Jarrow, but Yarrow, sorry. Yeah,
Jarrow.
Jarrow. I'm not surprised. They're gonna try uh, in small communities that are probably have a lot of people on benefits, where a lot of unemployment. Because we're told there's very little unemployment, but I don't think that's right. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who with the last 2 years they've got disabilities and stuff, and they're not being counted as unemployed.
Persistence over resistance says, could the AI algorithm prevent the market from collapsing completely? If they're all in sync, but then again, I think the market's so wide and so widespread, it's too much to contain under one single program.
The algorithms are programmed by human beings, and if sentiment changes and things change in terms of economics, numbers, interest rates, AI itself can't save the market. I mean, AI and algorithms, for example, right now, let's say that the 10-year yield goes up, the algorithm says 10-year yield goes up, sell gold. You see, so we've always had this, when bonds are going down, gold can't go up. But there could be a time when that relationship changes. It's just a matter of how the relationships in the markets between assets are doing, and ultimately it's human beings that program the algorithms, I would say.
Yeah, very true. And they're not all knowing, so they can only program in accordance to what I think real world events have already occurred.
Pablo Pina, how much billions will be needed to print in UBI? Well, I don't know. It depends. Here in the UK, probably not as much as in the US. But
yeah, and it's going to be an ongoing thing. So, yeah, it goes to get people addicted to government support.
Rolf Steiner thinks Sam Bankman-Fried could help stabilize the market.
Yeah, so
he created a big business, so he could maybe Rolf Steiner is right. Maybe he should join the Federal Reserve Board and help them.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. What else we got here? Now, let me see here. Let's look at so as of now, in your estimates, where do we go from here? Now that as you say, midterm elections, it's kind of going to wind down. The Fed is going to have to, I guess, make some tough decisions soon, heading into the end of the year. Will this crypto, expose more of the corruption / money laundering / interconnectiveness of the bank Wall Street?
It's really because I'd never heard of FTX until 2 days ago. It was huge because I don't follow crypto too much, but I've learned that the guy was the biggest donor to the Democratic Party. At Clinton and Blair at his conferences, and then the day of the election, the whole thing gets flushed.
Right.
I don't know. I smell a rat.
So last thing, was it accidental or intentional as
I
a
don't
distraction?
know.
That's the part where
the thing is, we'll probably never find out because he gave so much money to the people at the top.
There's a lot of politicians are probably involved.
They're going to probably give us a version of things that is not the truth.
Yeah. We'll take this last question here from UK Financial Preparedness. It says, what are your thoughts on platinum? And has a healthy increase the last few days. I I haven't followed it much. How about you, Mario?
Uh, yeah, platinum is a precious metal, but it's also used for uh, in industry for catalytic converters.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only like mostly mined in South Africa, so it's quite susceptible to the situation there. But I personally think hard assets are going to do well in the next few years or even decade. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't I don't own platinum and I don't follow it too much, but yeah, I think there's a good resistance around 1200. I mean, if you go back a bit more, if you go on the daily chart,
Mm-hmm.
you might find, or you've got
Uh,
the hourly chart there, I think. If you
yeah.
change it to daily,
Mm-hmm.
uh, uh, yeah. So you see, yeah, 1200, 1300 is, yeah, it's picking up a bit like gold and silver, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you can't go wrong holding something in your possession, man. That's for sure. All right, well, let's get ready to wrap it up. I see. Let me see more precious metals talk. But so what are you keeping your eye on for the remainder of this month here? Anything that should be brought to our attention or anything of that nature?
Um, Not really, not really. I mean, I think now what we need to look out for, only in the short term,
Hmm.
because long term it doesn't matter, but it could affect the markets, are Fed officials coming out trying to manage things
Yeah,
because they might think people are getting ahead of themselves because of that CPI number.
yeah,
So keep an eye out for that. But
yeah,
for no, for precious metals, I think things look good. Not that I didn't think it ever did,
yeah.
that it didn't, as they have to keep inflating the system.
Hmm. Yeah. So over here we got, we'll see the after effects of this election and how people respond to that. We got the whole diesel issue. I think it's still on the
Oh yeah, the
table, and
diesel issue is not just important for you guys, for the whole world.
yeah.
Because if there's a diesel shortage in the U.S., it's very serious because so much of our economy depends on diesel, not
Hmm.
just people driving their car.
Right. Logistically speaking, for food, time, everything, delivery of everything. So yeah, and I haven't heard much about the railroad strike or whatever the negotiation came from that. So we never know what could pop up, and then of course, whatever it is going to be blamed on Russia and Ukraine. So or some unforeseen event. But all right, people. We're about 47 minutes. As always, we appreciate you for hanging out with us and hearing us go back and forth on just where we're at and what's happening. But self-sustainability, get your weight up, do everything you can to limit your exposure to all this craziness, man. Like we're witnessing from the meltdown of cryptos, these exchanges that, if you don't have it in your own possession, do you really own it? That's going to be the question that you'll be confronted with. So enjoy your weekend and wherever you at, wherever good weather you got, hopefully it's still decent. We got good weather here, surprisingly. So I'm going to
Yeah,
take
it's
advantage of
just
that.
like felt like spring today here.
Right, exactly. Had me a little walk a moment ago. So, all right, my good people, be blessed, be safe, and Medico 64, rethinking a dollar. Check us out, and yeah, stay blessed. Peace.